I was born in Fort Benning, Georgia, and at the end of the war in 1945, and then went to Michigan for 4 years while my dad attended dental school, and then moved to Billings, Montana, where I grew up and went grades 1 through 12 in Billings, Montana. It was a great place to grow up. I really enjoyed that experience. But I realized that I needed to spread my wings. I knew that I was just a hick from Montana, and I wanted to travel even from an early age. So I went to college and graduated from Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois, which was a great experience being right on the border of Chicago, and graduated from there in 67, and then immediately went to medical school, where I graduated from Ohio State University in 71. And then I joined the U.S. Public Health Service, where I served for 11 years. My first gig was a 2-year period at the El Reno Federal Reformatory in El Reno, Oklahoma. It was a federal prison. So I was this sole prison doc for 2 years right out of my internship. That was an education too. But then I moved to Seattle, where we had family, and served in the public health service there at the public health hospital in Seattle. That went well, but I realized that I was also kind of stagnating because I was a general medical officer and all my interesting patients were being referred out to specialists. So I realized I wanted to specialize. So I did. So I moved to Denver, spent 3 years at the University of Colorado serving as a resident in radiology, and then promptly moved back to Seattle, where I stayed in the public health service until President Reagan closed every U.S. public health service hospital down. And so put me out of a job temporarily, but the hospital morphed into a different type of hospital. It was not a federal hospital anymore. And so I stayed on there and became chief of radiology and served in that capacity for 5 years. And then realized I wanted to travel, which is one of my great loves, and I hadn't been traveling nearly as much as I wanted to. So I stepped down as chief and stepped back from full-time radiology and started doing locum tenens work, which is temporary. It's just another word for temporary physician work. And I served in that capacity until I retired about 12 years ago. While very interesting and challenging, to me, some of the more interesting things that I've done were really based on hobbies. And one of those, and a common thread through my whole life, would be imaging. I got a Brownie flash camera in the 3rd grade, which I still have, and still have the pictures from that, and started taking pictures at a young age, and have been taking pictures ever since in one capacity or another. I suspect that's probably why I went into radiology eventually. It's another form of imaging. Other hobbies that I've had, one would be log cabin building. I built 2 log cabins. One was just a 10 by 12 bush cabin that I built with a friend. I bought 20 acres in 100 miles east of Seattle. And then 15 years later, designed and contracted out a 1,600 square foot real log cabin that's still there to this day. And that took 20 years for me to finish it. They brought the logs, but I did all the finishing work. This is disjointed, probably because my life is kind of disjointed and comes in chunks. But early on, I became interested in model railroading and built about a 10 by 30 foot layout in my basement in Seattle and got interested in that. But I also was interested in the tabletop photography that I was able to do. And then in 2004, the International Model Railroad Association convention came to Seattle, and they asked me to be the photographer for it, which I did. And then I had to make up the choice: was I going to finish the layout that I was about half finished with, or was I going to be their official photographer? And I chose the latter. That seemed to be a more interesting challenge to me. So I did that, and that was really fun, moving all over Puget Sound, photographing the top layouts in the area. And in the meantime, I either wrote or co-wrote half a dozen articles that got published in various model railroad magazines, and I did all the photography for those, which was a nice challenge, using my skills at tabletop photography. During this time, I was nurturing an intense interest in astronomy. I decided that I would lay model railroading aside, which I did, and took up astronomy. And because of the property that I had east of Seattle, it was much darker skies and much clearer skies than Seattle. And I built my first observatory, which was really nice. It's called a roll-off roof observatory. It was a 10 by 12, which had lots of room, that's where I got into astro imaging for the first time. I wanted to take pictures of galaxies and whatnot, so I did. When I first started getting into it, I talked to this was in Seattle, a very good astrophotographer, and I said, how long is this going to take me? And he said, well, it'll take you about a year to acquire the equipment and learn how to use it, and then it'll take you 10 years to get good at it. And I rolled my eyes and went, no way. But in fact, that's exactly what happened, that I had to, it did take 10 years to get good at it. I've had a website for quite a while. And then during COVID, I decided that it was time to put some of my images from the website into a book. And I was actually helping a friend write a book. And I realized, well, I have enough material here for a book. So I also wrote a book, which is available on Amazon. It's a picture book of my astrophotos. But I also realized that there were better skies available to me. So I moved down to Green Valley, Arizona, where I now live. And the reason for that was for clear skies. And it's some of the best skies and dark skies in the country. I bought a Astro Haven dome that's still in my backyard, and I still use it for astro imaging. It's so I still have a foot in the door in the imaging department. As I mentioned, I always wanted to travel and have always enjoyed traveling. So I was just thinking this morning. I think I've been to Asia about a dozen times. Took a 1-month tour of China back in '83. And also just North Africa. I really enjoyed Tunisia and Morocco. But I've also been to Europe about a dozen times. And then another time I decided that I would go down and photograph all the major Mayan ruins in Central America, which I did over a number of years. I realized that I hadn't been to South America or Antarctica. So I did that about 5 years ago. That was actually a cruise, but we went pretty much around South America and spent several days in Antarctica and went through Costa Rica, spent time in I'd actually been to Costa Rica before, but as John knows, the birding there is fantastic. It's a birder's paradise. So instead of listing the birds that I saw there, I photographed them. So, I should also mention that I've been married and divorced twice, and I'm in a long-term relationship with Lisa, a wonderful woman, and I have one wonderful daughter by marriage and one wonderful granddaughter by marriage, and we're very close. The most recent hobby that I've come up with, I decided, and this is only 2 weeks ago, way back in the day, I played clarinet throughout high school and junior high for about 8 or 10 years. And so I had some musical background and then left that and got into guitar. And so I've been plinking around on a guitar for some 50 years. But I'd never played a piano in my life, had no idea how to do it, and decided it was time I learned. I'm 77 years old now, and I thought, it's never too late to try something new. So that's what I just bought a piano, and I'm trying to learn boogie woogie, which is a challenge, but it's a lot of fun, and I'm having a good time.